So hello guys, and welcome to another video. And earlier, the review scores for Mario Luigi Brothership dropped, and they're pretty interesting, so I wanted to discuss them in this video. So currently, it has an 80 on Metacritic, which is pretty good. I know some people are expecting higher, like high 80s like the Thousand Year Door remake, or like low 90s like Mario Wonder, but I feel like we should have the expectation that this is made by a new developer. So sometimes, like, to some, like, game journalists and everything, they do have, like, high standards when it comes to certain things. Like, with a well-established series that has a very consistent lineup of games, I feel like there definitely was a high standard there. So the fact that it does have an 80 is pretty good. Especially because it's pretty close to a lot of other review scores in the series. Like, most of the scores fall between an 80 and a 90, and most of them are in the low to mid 80s. Like, Mario & Luigi Dream Team is only 1 point higher at 81, as well as the Superstar Saga remake. And I think that's a good sign. Like, for me personally, Dream Team is one of my favorite games in this series. It's actually tied with Bowser's Inside Story. Even though the general consensus is that Bowser's Inside Story is better, I actually like Dream Team just as much. And the Superstar Saga remake, while I haven't finished it, I do really like it so far. Superstar Saga is my favorite game in the series, but I don't know, the remake is pretty good, I would say. I'm not sure if it would top the original for me, but I do think it definitely is a pretty good remake. So the fact that Brothership has a very close score to those games is a good sign. Especially considering the fact that I feel like it might be a little more enjoyable, and I feel like it might have a bit more appeal to the fans compared to, like, gaming journalists and everything. So I feel like that's definitely a comparable score to the other Mario & Luigi games. And it has a higher score than Paper Jam as well. I mean, Paper Jam has a 76. And I feel like it's not really hard to see why that game scored lower than the others. Even though 76 is still a good score, I really don't like Paper Jam that much. And yeah, it was kind of disappointing for a Mario & Luigi game, so it kind of was understandable why that was a few points lower. So seeing Brothership a few points higher than that is promising and everything. And also the fact that it doesn't have any negative reviews when Paper Jam did. So that's also promising as well. But when you look at the scores of Brothership, most of them seem to be really good. Like, there are a ton of scores in the 90s on here, like The Gamer, Nintendo Life, even some divisions of IGN, but we'll get into IGN in a little bit. We'll get into IGN. But yeah, a lot of them, like Level Up, My Nintendo News, Games Hub, different stuff like that. There are definitely a lot of scores in the 90s there, and even in the high 80s as well, with like Nintendo Duo and different ones like that, in CG Magazine. There's definitely like a lot of like pretty good scores there. Like, the vast majority of scores are like 80 and above, which is a good sign. And there aren't really that many scores in the 70s as well. And that's basically where it kind of starts fizzling out, which I feel like it's to be expected for a game that is well received. So I think that's definitely a good sign there. But there are a couple outliers here. And it's kind of funny, because when you look through the scores, it goes from 70, then it drops down to 50. And you have Digital Trends and IGN, who gave it a 50. And that has been pretty controversial over the past few hours. Especially IGN. Well, considering the fact that IGN is, like, pretty influential compared to other video game journalists and everything. So yeah, this was definitely a weird score to see. Like just out of all of them, you basically have mostly like 80s and 90s, and then you have 50. And while I respect this reviewer's opinion and everything, I just think some of their points here are a bit weird, I would say, especially for a review like this. It almost comes across as kind of unprofessional, I would say. I mean, I know I'm saying that with, like, the bias that, as someone who loves the Mario RPGs and everything, but a lot of these things really, like, even from, like, the footage that I've seen, they've kind of mentioned some of their, like, opinions on the aesthetics of the game, like how the islands look generic, and I completely disagree with them. Like, even though I haven't played the game yet, I have seen a significant amount of the different locales and areas in the game, and I think it looks great. Even if the game ends up being just what I've seen so far, which I know it's not, because that's usually not the case when it comes to game trailers and everything. Like, even based on what we've seen alone, I would already be satisfied with that. So, yeah, and then it's just like, yeah, I don't know. They go on about, like, Paper Jam, like, not having original characters, which, I mean, I agree with, but some of these are just a bit too nitpicky, I would say, for, like, a reason to drag the score down to a 50. There's also, like, one thing, like with how you control Luigi and everything. I'll give them that's their opinion, because I can't really say anything about that yet since I haven't played the game. And they really go on about Luigi here and everything. And they say that it performs horribly as well. It says worse than Link's Awakening, not quite to the level of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Yeah, that is crazy. Like, even comparing it to Scarlet and Violet, but worse than Link's Awakening? Well, I mean, I didn't necessarily have a problem with Link's Awakening. I feel like that was definitely kind of overblown. But that's another thing that I can't really speak about too much, since I haven't played it yet, but yeah, a lot of the things here, they also say about, like, the story and dialogue dragging on too much, and that is really, like, a nitpick. I don't know why that's, like, a super huge negative thing about this. I mean, I get that it's their opinion, but yeah, this is, like, a lot of the points that they brought up here kind of veers into that, like, territory that IGN is kind of, like, infamous for in some of their reviews about, like, being, like, really petty about certain issues. Like, everyone brings up that joke about too much water for the Pokemon Oras review, but it kind of, there's, like, bits and pieces and elements of that there. But while I do respect the opinion that this reviewer was disappointed by the game and everything, because, I mean, there are some popular games that I could definitely understand some people being disappointed by, some of the points they brought up here as major flaws are just kind of weird, I would say. Like, honestly, this really seems like, from the things that they've mentioned, this seems more like aside from, like, the things that they legitimately had issues with in the gameplay, like, the other things that they mentioned here, it really seems like that would boil down to, like, a 7 out of 10 rather than a 5 out of 10. It's kind of weird. But yeah, that was really the only iffy score there. There's also the digital trends one, which I'm not even gonna bother talking about. It doesn't really seem that interesting, but yeah, I do think the scores overall, like, on Metacritic, are pretty good. And I feel like this is definitely on track to being, like, just as good as a lot of other Mario and Luigi games, especially ones like Dream Team in Partners in Time. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my Discord server and Twitter if you want to. Goodbye.